Oh, hola, 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 hola. Bueno, buenos días. Buenos días a todos y a todas. Al segundo día de este workshop de astronomía para la equidad y la inclusión, astronomía más allá de los sentidos comunes. Welcome everyone. I don't know how many people is in the chat or in Zoom from abroad, but welcome to the second day of the workshop of astronomy.
Astronomy and Inclusion and Equity. En el día de hoy tenemos unas charlas fantásticas, como las que fueron en el día de ayer. Recuerden que este workshop se está transmitiendo por YouTube y que los que quieran conectarse por Zoom también pueden. Santiago, al que le voy a dar la palabra en un instante, ha mandado los links.
Eh,
Eh, Estamos muy contentos con lo que sucedió ayer. Quiero compartir algunos números. Éramos unas 20 personas locales, 78 estuvieron en YouTube y alrededor de 12, 15 por internet. Así que superamos, creo yo, los 100 participantes, o estuvimos en ese orden, lo que nos hace sentir muy contentos. Eh, Le cedo la palabra a Santiago para la primera charla invitada.
Muy bien, muchas gracias, Beatriz. Bueno, también quiero darles las gracias por haber atendido por segundo día este evento. De hecho, los números que dice Beatriz ya subieron bastante. En YouTube ya tenemos 110 visualizaciones, porque claro, hay gente en muchas partes del mundo, entonces cuando ya era de día, pues aquí ya estábamos terminando. Decirles también que veo caras nuevas, entonces voy a rápidamente a contarles de qué se trata este workshop y agradecer también a las entidades que han apoyado este evento en Uruguay y en varias partes del mundo. Es la tercera vez que hacemos este workshop, la segunda vez que lo hacemos de manera presencial y nuestro interés es que esto siga y continúe en el tiempo y que podamos estar reuniéndonos cada cierto tiempo, conociendo las nuevas experiencias y cómo las conferencias que aquí hemos escuchado inspiran a otros docentes, estudiantes, investigadores a seguir haciendo actividades para promover la equidad y la inclusión. Ese sería nuestro objetivo a largo plazo. Bueno, quiero decirles también que tenemos un grupo de personas, algunas están acá, otras no pudieron venir, pero están atentas a lo que estamos haciendo. Entonces quiero mencionar que en nuestro comité científico, además de Beatriz y de mi persona, está Ángela Pérez del Planetario y el Parque Explore en Medellín, está Bristi Ocaña, que ha estado ahí muy atenta, ahora la escucharemos. Muchas gracias, Bristi. Y está Joana también aquí presente, Joana Casado. Y en el comité local está Oscar Méndez, el director del Planetario de Montevideo, está Juan José Downs, que es el organizador, el chair del comité organizador de la LARIM, que termina mañana, está también Juan Pablo Moreira y Daniel Gastelo. A ellos, pues, muchísimas gracias. Ayer estuvieron por acá, hoy no los veo, pero seguramente más tarde llegarán. Bueno, decirles que en nuestra página web va a quedar alojada gran parte de la información, es decir, lo que queremos también es que este contenido se pueda expandir y que cada uno de ustedes sea una semilla para que mucha más gente pueda entrar a nuestra página y pueda visitar, por ejemplo, los trabajos que están expuestos allá afuera, los pósters, y también aquí vamos a tener el link a los contenidos de las memorias, los proceedings de este congreso, que ya les contaremos un poco al final. Y ahí también va a estar el link para que puedan directamente acceder a la transmisión vía streaming por el canal de YouTube. Entonces, si quieren compartirle a sus contactos esa página web, eh, pues sería muy bueno. Bien, y ahora sí entrando en materia con el contenido de esta segunda sesión, el segundo y último día, tenemos también dos conferencias invitadas. Esas conferencias son de media hora y tenemos 9 conferencias cortas, contribuciones de personas que están presentes, otras que también nos acompañan virtualmente. Así que escucharemos pues conferencias muy interesantes. Yo creo, ayer yo salí con muchas ideas nuevas. Así que espero también hacerlo y que ustedes aprovechen esta sesión. También los pósters, ¿no? Es muy importante porque allí se plasma el trabajo, en muchos casos, de estudiantes. Ayer tuvimos acá un grupo de estudiantes también que nos inspiraron. Un profesor me dijo que se había inspirado para hacer este proyecto con otro grupo de estudiantes en su colegio. y eso pues es fascinante, que logremos llegar a muchas más personas. Bueno, ahora le voy a dar la palabra a Brisi que ha estado muy involucrada con los proyectos de inclusión y está también liderando y ella fue una de las que impulsó el grupo de inclusión en el Caribe. Así que, Brisi, estás por ahí para que nos saludes y ella va a ser quien nos presente a la primera conferencista de hoy. Adelante, Brisi, cuando quieras.
Hoy. Hola Santiago, muchas gracias. Hola a todo el mundo. Ayer quedó fantástico, como ya dijeron. I'm going to switch to English now because our next speaker is from Trinidad Tobago. So, and I'm going to read her bio because I don't want to miss any of it. I'm very honored to present her. So, Shirin Hake is a professor of astronomy at the University of West Indies. Her area of research include observational astronomy, cosmology, and astrobiology, and she is a fellow of the Royal Astronomical Society. She has an MPhil in psychology as well. She is the recipient of several teacher and science research awards, and she is the first woman to receive the CADICOM Science Award. She is a 2020 laureate of the Anthony N. Sapga Caribbean Award for Excellence in Science and Technology. She is co-founder of the Caribbean Astronomy for Inclusion Group and is the director of the University of West Indies NRAO 9 Caribbean Hub for Radio Astronomy and the CEO founder of the WISH Women in Science for Hope Foundation. She has produced several Caribbean science documentaries and 2 science television series. She is also the producer of several science magazines for adults and children. So as I said, it's an honor to welcome Shirin to the stage. Shirin, all yours.
Muchas gracias. Hola, everybody. Thank you very much. And as Breezy mentioned, I come from the island of Trinidad and Tobago, where we pretty much speak English. So bear with me. At this point, I'll start to share my screen with you. Okay, right. So I will assume everyone is being able to see this. All right. So let's take a journey really into the experience in Trinidad and Tobago of engaging in taking astronomy outreach in a very different way from what we would have done in the past. So I'm going to take you through in the next half an hour or so the feel and sound of astronomy for the blind and low vision persons in Trinidad and Tobago. In front of you is an iconic image. Who doesn't know it? And it changed a different perspective, changed the way we experienced and understood planet Earth. It actually started a different type of sensitivity to environmental awareness. And that's what a changed perspective does. And in a way, being able to bring astronomy to persons who have not been able to experience that lends to that kind of richness, and no one should be left behind. So I'm going to begin with our story, which is really very recent, and Breezy is a colleague of mine, and this is how we actually met up. So the whole story actually begins in 2021-ish, really just 2 years ago, in the middle of the COVID situation that was worldwide, which actually made it very difficult to engage in outreach activities. But within that context, anyone who engages in astronomy for the blind must know of the inspiring Dr. Wanda Diaz Merced. And Dr. Merced, her heart and soul is in the Caribbean. And she got in touch. It is her who put all of us in touch with each other who are in the Caribbean. And so was born the idea of CAI, Caribbean Astronomy for Inclusion. And we formed as a group, and these are just some. There are many other persons who have contributed to our discussions, but Breezy is our president. And with the support of Wanda guiding us through this, we began something which for the English-speaking Caribbean is really non-existent, okay? And that is astronomy for persons who are blind and may have low vision. And these are some of our other persons who are on the team with us. So we have Professor Javier from Honduras, of course, Wanda, Breezy, Rulux from Haiti. William joins us from the US, and I represent what I like to say, the English-speaking Caribbean. And I'll explain why I stick to that term so much. So what have we been doing? It was this is the third astronomy workshop for Beyond the Senses, Common Senses, and the one that was held last year, Breezy actually presented on some of the work that we had begun to do. And with it, we had a wake-up call, if I can put it that way. And we began to engage in persons who knew far more about persons with disabilities than we could even imagine. One of the talks that we had, which was really eye-opening for us, was given by someone from the University of the West Indies, Dr. Benjamin Brathwaite. And from him, we learned the sensitivities of different communities and things that we took for granted that we didn't understand. And we realized that this was such a massive situation in front of us, and there were so many ways to approach it. And it didn't take too long before we penned together challenges of astronomy outreach to persons with disabilities in the Caribbean, because we realized how challenging it was. Along the way, of course, we had a talk from Dr. Trotter on gastronomy. So there we realized that there was so much content out there. And at this point now, I zoom you into what I keep repeating, the English-speaking Caribbean. This is, well, here it does not even look like a pale blue dot, right? It's a big blue marble, as my opening slide was. Planet Earth is like a big blue marble. And you begin to zoom in, and this is Trinidad and Tobago. So Trinidad and Tobago and the English-speaking Caribbean are typically lumped together as LAC, Latin America and the Caribbean. When they divide the world up into regions, that's where we fall in. Now, I want to really bring home to you that the Latin American part of the world is hugely larger than the English-speaking Caribbean. The population of the English-speaking Caribbean is barely 6 million, less than the population of New York. And it's about 16 islands or so, you know, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, Jamaica, Antigua, and so on. And I realized that our voice was drowned when we were put together with Latin America. Not only was our voice drowned, as Breezy took the initiative to introduce me in English, because a big barrier for us in the region that we were in is that we actually don't speak Spanish. There's a lot of attempts, and we are trying to make that pretty much a second language, I can say. But in Trinidad and in much of the English-speaking Caribbean, if you are engaging in any research, our first go-to is actually North America or Europe, not our immediate neighbors who are next door to us, and because of the language barrier. So our problems, therefore, are unique, and that's what I wanted to highlight today, and I hope I can bring home to you. And I do want to thank the committee members for honoring me. It's truly an honor to give this keynote speak and give us a voice where we get drowned in the fugue. So it's estimated the population of Trinidad and Tobago is 1.5 million. Yes, a city, if so much in some places, but we are a country. And it's estimated that about 79,000 people have visual impairment. Of that, 10,000 or so are actually blind. That comes to less than 1%. And the world historically has always operated on majorities. I mean, even if you're left-handed, as I am, you discover it in many of your operations that the world is built for the majority that share the normative experience. And that leaves a lot of people behind. But that's why we are here, and we all know that. sadly, the leading causes of blindness in Trinidad and Tobago are actually preventable: cataracts, glaucoma, and diabetic retinopathy. And yet many people do experience this. And some of the challenges that we have is that they are a group, and 2 years in operation, as we started with Caribbean Astronomy for Inclusion, I began to realize specific challenges. So we did have a institution. We have the Trinidad and Tobago Blind Welfare Association, and they've been in existence for 108 years. So there is sensitivity. There are things in place. This is taken from their website. I'm not going to read all of it for you, but just to highlight that the organization's vision is a world that is inclusive, diverse, and equitable for all. And they offer many services. All right, so they offer services for textbooks in Braille, large print, orientation, helping with daily living skills, and classes for persons who are blind or would have low vision. And very, very important today for being functional, of course, is computer literacy and text-to-speech classes. Music, right? Absolutely essential. And these are the things, okay? So smart devices and consultation. I want you to look at that list and think of what's not there, okay? So as you think about that, here are some of the other services they do offer. They have volunteers who work with them to assist persons with, daily life things, to help them with traveling and driving, shopping, and things like that, screening, blood pressure, and so on. So what's missing? Okay, there is nothing, there's no offering of outreach, let's say in STEM, in science. Let's not even talk about astronomy, okay? So that's the situation one came to. The other leading body in Trinidad and Tobago, they are known as PAVI, Persons Associated with Visual Impairment. And they too, their missions are about how to make them be able to live an enriching life, being able to link up with other organizations, partner with them so that they can have full and meaningful lives. But all of this, wherever I began to look, there was just no opportunity for learning anything to do with the sciences. And as our journey began, and for me, it became a very learning experience of a world that I had not experienced before. And as we began and tried to reach out to the community, this is what I'm going to share with you. So very recently, I have linked up with our major organization in Trinidad, which will deal with sciences. And they actually used to run a science center. I believe it is one of the few, if not the only science center in the English-speaking Caribbean. Yes, you heard me right, okay? So that's why I want to get that sense to you that we are a small region that gets drowned out, whose voice gets drowned out. So I have linked up with them for outreach for persons who are blind and with low vision to how can we make this happen. And they are very, very supportive of this venture. My dream has been to set up a museum display interactive experience. And as it happens right now, the Science Center, as it operated in the past, is not functional in that manner. So we would have to go out and do outreach, right? Not actually be able to have a place where we can set this up. But there's a lot of enthusiasm wherever I have looked. Earlier this year, we took part in, really for us, it's a landmark disability conference that was held. And yes, that's me with a giant 3D printed moon. These are actually my students. He worked on a research project for materials for persons who are blind. And here she's holding Braille posters. So, and they took part in the conference with me. A moving experience for me. You know, you have sometimes in life these moments that stay with you forever, and it was one of those. There was a lady in the audience, and she was blind, and she requested that she wanted to, they knew that I had this 3D printed moon with me, and she wanted to, we did pass it around. So I went and I chatted with her, and I had never seen the enthusiasm. She just could not stop feeling all the tactile surface on it. She asked me so many questions. And what she said to me was that they are actually told that science, you cannot do science. You go into business, you can, if you are furthering your studies, it's humanities, anything but science. And here I was like telling her, no, we can bring astronomy to you. It's hard to explain. Like I said, it was a life-changing moment for me to see what a simple act like that meant to an individual. So I began collecting my stuff, and I realized that I listened to some of Mr. Mike Simmons' presentation yesterday, and as he says, and I totally support, that there is no shortage of resources. There's amazing work that people are doing. Several of them are part of this conference. I know Allison is going to be on later, and work that people are doing behind the scenes. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. I don't actually have to create stuff. Well, my students did some of these tactile constellations that you can see. And these are actually tiles that are printed with the images. As you can see, there's some nebulae and galaxy and large scale structure, cosmic microwave background radiation. And this is actually a tactile plate of the, say, surface of Mars. You could feel the terrain of Mars by feeling that. And this is all very exciting. These things, earlier this year, I visited the University of Newcastle and had the honor to meet up with Dr. Christopher Harrison. And he showed me these things, and I'm working with him now. So these are actually tactile. You can actually print any diagram or anything like that on this special sensitive paper. And I mean, and for me, it was mind blowing that how we can now reach out to a community in the English-speaking Caribbean that have pretty been told that, no, this is not for you. So over the last year or so, we learned so much from other persons in the Caribbean Astronomy for Inclusion, from Wanda and Kathy, who designed some of these things. So this is Cardis, and here's my student who actually built it. And again, all of these things are tactile. You can learn to feel and understand different coordinate systems, and not just the spherical and the Cartesian and how they convert, but you could also actually use it to perhaps align telescopes. So there was this whole new way of doing things that I was learning about. It was a learning thing for me. And I mentioned Allison before, and I know she's going to come on later. And this was mind-blowing to get in touch with her and the project that they've been doing, where they built the light sound, and she was very kind to send one to me. We'd been trying to build it, but over COVID, we had a lot of problems accessing some materials and so on. So there was light sound, which I'm sure she will talk a lot more about in her segment. And we decided that let's test this. So this is the university campus, UE, St. Augustine, that you're seeing. These are my first year students from Introduction to Astronomy. And all I said is that, guys, I want you to work with this instrument and figure out how to use it and so on. And they did an amazing job. And as it happened, there we had a partial solar eclipse. It's not the ideal situation for the light sound, but we said we'll test it anyway over it. So we had about like 50% coverage at the time. And they were able to record it. And I took the recording, and the few persons that it has taken me years to be in touch with, persons who are blind, when they listened to it and when they knew what they were listening to, I often say the power is in the knowing. I mean, you could look at, okay, I'm venturing into my research area. You could look at what's called a pitch lake, tar lake in Trinidad. Someone said it looks like a car park because you don't know. But then you realize that, oh my God, we could understand the origins of life through this. It's like, okay, mind blowing. So in that same kind of way, these are words from one of them. She was just like, thank you so much. We had tried to link up with Wanda that day because Wanda was also going to stream it, but we had a little technical difficulties. So it's remarkable that these amazing resources are out there. As I mentioned just earlier this year, I was at Newcastle, and I met up with the creator of the audio universe, Dr. Chris Harrison. Here he is. And we visited the planetarium and we experienced it. So it's a tour of the solar system, audio universe. And the idea is that nearly the entire universe is invisible to the naked eye. So why not use senses beyond our sight to explore it, to enjoy it, and to understand it? And of course, I'm sure you've already heard a lot about sonification in this workshop. And essentially it's that, right? Converting the light into sound to experience it. And this was so beautiful an experience for sighted persons like myself. And I actually closed my eyes to experience it in another dimension. I mean, the senses to me are just different dimensions that you experience something in. So the soundtrack is what represents your journey through the solar system, and all the objects, they come with different sounds, different pitches. And I mean, now you can go on YouTube and listen to a lot of sonification. But this is a sort of an artistic journey that you take into and experience the solar system as it is. So Chris and I got talking, and as he noted, right, and as I saw the audio universe myself, that it was developed in at Newcastle, and therefore the music and the sounds that accompany it are those of the experience of the European and the North American world, if I may say that. And the question became that the choices that we make for sonification, right, and how they represent, I mean, it is being used in, I mean, actual data to represent things. Is there a cultural component to it? Music in the English-speaking Caribbean, and especially in Trinidad and Tobago, because this is where the newest instrument in the world has been created, the steel pan. This drums and steel pan is what our people identify with. And so this is a project now that Chris and I are looking into, that if you can make audio universe culturally sensitive to the region, to the people who are going to experience it. And sometimes I think life has so much serendipity. It turns out that one of the persons who is blind that I am working with, bringing onto this project, he is a musician. So it doesn't get better than that. So this is an ongoing, we are just beginning. So we're going to take a look at that. So the last 2 years or so of engaging in outreach in a different modality showed me there's no shortage of resources because of the marvelous work that people are doing out there. So we kicked off our initiative, right? So what you've seen so far in my presentation is the what. We have all the stuff, and I now realize I can get even the other stuff, and even to set up my experiential setup for the universe, okay? But this is what has been on my mind. So what? So what? What is the significance? Because so far I have barely mentioned how much outreach we've been able to do with the blind community. Okay, so none of this would matter if I can't take it out to the people that it's meant for. Now, in other countries, because we have other countries representing and presenting at this conference, your experience may be very different. But I'm telling you, in Trinidad and Tobago, it has not been easy to connect with the community. We've been trying. So I will share with you now a focus group interviews that I did. And I felt my sample size was quite small, but it's a focus group. And we have verbal consent for whatever I'm going to present to you. And but I saw Mike's presentation yesterday, and his sample size was comparable, so I feel better. Okay, so we have 5 participants, 3 persons who are blind, and 2 of my project students. Actually, you've seen them in some of the earlier slides. So the 2 physics students, they worked on projects to develop materials and to test things for persons who are blind. The other 3 persons, one works at the National Library in Trinidad and Tobago. Another one works at the Disability Affairs Unit in Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. And the third is the musician that I mentioned. So I asked these 5 people 8 questions, okay? So Santiago, worry not, I am keeping an eye on my time, okay? I just need half an hour more. Don't worry, we're going okay. All right, so I asked them these 8 questions. Are you interested in astronomy? Have you had an opportunity to learn? Would you like to learn more about it with other senses, such as sound and touch? What topic interests you most? What do you think is the greatest challenge to engage in something like this? Would you like to attend workshops? And would you like to experience an interactive museum display? And ask them finally anything else you would like to add. So I'm just going to summarize to those 8 questions what they shared with us. Are you interested in astronomy? 100%. Excitement, affirmative by all. Below are just some specific comments. I'll just highlight some of them because of in the interest of time. And so there was, we all know that, all of us who engage in astronomy outreach, I always say there's no other discipline like astronomy. Like you have so many astronomy clubs, you know, you don't really have a quantum mechanics club. I mean, at least not for the general population that astronomy reaches out, okay? Have you had an opportunity to learn about astronomy? So the green top are the persons who are blind, and the blue ones are my students, right? So 2 of them said yes through an expo when they had some sight, and another one said through some online resources, and one person had had no experience with astronomy at all. Now, see the huge gap here, because of course my students were doing their degrees, so they have full exposure to astronomy. Would you like to learn more about it? And I mean, I have copy and pasted it. So this is their writing, the capital letters. Yes, it would be absolutely helpful to do so. Yes, of course, right? And another said, I never had the experience, but I would be very interested to learn astronomy via touch and sound and interaction. For the students, it became an excitement of how could they widen their own perspective in astronomy by taking astronomy to the community that we are looking at. What topic interested you? Interestingly, I will say, I guess, the Big Bang, Expanding universe showed up in more than one case. One was very specific, the layers of the atmosphere, the solar system, and there may be topics that might interest me, but I'm just not aware of it. All right. And like I said, we don't have to really highlight the student zone. And then what is the greatest challenge for you? The lack of accessibility available locally. My greatest challenge might be comprehending an object that I cannot see, right, or touch. And then one person highlighted financial support is needed. And this came out, right, in several cases, that for them to be able to experience it, maybe be able to study further, they recommend that maybe we need scholarships for persons with disability. Interestingly, financial came up for the students also. then would you like to attend? So it was a very inspiring feedback. Yes, yes, very much. That would be awesome. Even being in a space where the conversations are happening helps to grow. Would you like to experience an interactive museum? Yes, this is, like I said, I copy and pasted their answers with their permission. That would be the bomb, LOL, right? Simply said, yes. Okay, tactile and sound would be very nice. So it was all very, very positive, the response from them. And when I asked, the biggest feedback really comes with anything else you would like to add. Many individuals with visual impairments are denied the opportunity to understand science, and that's what I have come to learn. This will be an excellent initiative to help people with visual impairment understand their surroundings. And as they say, persons with disabilities are fascinated by what lies beyond our solar system as much as anyone else, but they're not getting the opportunities. And they even volunteer to help with anything that we would like to run. So these are the thoughts that plague me in the middle of the night, in 3 a.m. thoughts when you can't sleep, that I started to ask myself, why has it been so difficult? Why all of us who are engaged in outreach, you hold a star party, 600 people turn up. That's our experience. Here I am trying to reach out to persons who are blind. And now it has taken me 2 years to really properly connect with 3 persons. And when I discussed with them that if I hold a session, they said we can have about a group of 5 of us, when the numbers look like about 10,000 from the number of persons who are blind. So these are the questions that plague me. Are we entering their world or are they entering ours? Because it's different dimensions. I see senses as just a range of dimensions. I realized the last few years have shown me we have so much to learn from them, even as we believe we have so much to share. I think it's a given that resources and skills are not a problem, right? So what's going on? And this is what it is. There are walls that have led to silos that must be broken down, and we now need to build bridges. It's not a question of science that's happening anymore. It's a question of communication, awareness, and connecting with this community. So I end with the very inspiring words from Helen Keller. And I highly recommend, if you have not already read her book, The Story of My Life by her, right, as you would know, blind and deaf. And this is what she said: the chief handicap of the blind is not blindness, but the attitude of seeing people towards them. And this was my wake-up call as well, that there was so much to learn in terms of how we connect with them, how we understand their world. Their world is very complete. We are just a case of what's majority. If all of us did not see, the world would be constructed differently. That's all it is. And not that it's any richer or less rich. So folks, our journey has only just begun. And as we now go into our next phase of building the bridges and all being well, I'm hoping to be able to run a workshop in conjunction with Nehurst and the group early in next year. So with that, Breezy, thank you. I pass it back over to you. I will stop sharing now. Okay.
Okay, Sherry.
Much for this great experience presentation.
Time to take some questions from the audience, if you have any. Si tienen preguntas, comentarios. Here's one for you, Sherry.
Hello, my name is Silka. In one of the answer of your questions, I think one of the blind people, maybe the musician, said he will be happy to help you doing this kind of thing. Have you considered to involve blind people into your work?
All right, so just let me see if I got the question. If we have considered having blind persons engaging and actually assisting with the workshop, is that the question?
Yeah, I mean, developing new activities for yourself about astronomy? I don't know. Now it's not easy if they don't have previous knowledge of me, but
Correct.
have the ways to, understand things. And I wonder if you are considering, or if you already done, maybe, working with them on developing new activities, for example.
Okay. All right. So as I understand it, yes. So your suggestion is actually exactly what I've been thinking about. That we need to create opportunities where they can, even at the university level, the persons who responded to my question, the questions that we engaged in, they have degrees, they have university degrees, they are actually working, but what in their path to what they do, they were pretty much told is that you can't do science, you cannot experience astronomy. So yes, I am now going to look into how we can bring them into the university, even for, say, a special course. And with that, I do want to mention that we've worked a bit with our colleague, Dr. Wanda, and she has been writing textbooks for persons who are blind in astronomy. And with that kind of support from her, we should be able to engage people in the community to a higher level. I mean, we are now, like I said, we are now really just beginning. It has taken this long. I hope I caught your question properly.
You have one question here. Thank you. Congratulations. I apologize. I don't often have the opportunity to speak in English. This introduction serves a question, a statement, a congratulations for you. It's really a challenge initiative for everyone. I'm sorry. No. Uh, I found the utilization of touch actually sounds to be refreshing, illustrative, and in a good way. Um, so now it's almost about sound and sound. It's okay, but when the students are very young, it's not enough. So in my
Experience, I have developed a comprehensive course on astrometry, astrophysics, and cosmology for the UPB, the Universidad Pública Vasca, for the Miramón Cucha Space, told you in this que era Miramón Cucha Espacio de la Ciencia, for ONCE, the Blind Association in Spain. We employ small water launches as a laser pointer.
Not hearing anything right now.
No, and I see the transmission frozen, so I don't know if. Yep. Well, they keep. Okay, yeah, they're probably having issues. So
Okay.
sharing it was very interesting. Will they get back? I just want to say that extremely interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, and all the amazing work that this committee and all of you are doing. I feel so humbled to be part of this, actually.
No, you're doing great, and I love what you said about. Okay, I think they're back. So yeah. Well, already I'll tell you. I love what you said about feeling disconnected when you speak English. And in my mind, speaking Spanish, we always thought we were, even though we are more, because we're a lot of countries in Latin America who speak Spanish, right? So it's a perspective I never saw. So it was eye-opening too to think about it that way.
Yeah, which again goes that with what our experiences are with the groups that we are in, and that happens with the different communities that we are working in, you end up in a silo, and that's where we have to
Right.
now connect. And like you said, with simply the language is why we will deal with USA and England
Right.
quicker than the countries that are, have the stuff that are so close to us.
I know, and connecting to the cultural that you were talking about at the end, making the musical accessibly and culturally speaking, that is the point of everything. No, when we're trying to be inclusive, we want to be culturally inclusive as well, right?
Right.
It's not only necessarily a disability, that too, but also culturally. It's
Yes,
very interesting.
yeah, and it's the same experience we had when you were there for that talk with Benjamin, that
Yes.
on YouTube, you might see a lot of American Sign Language, and there's BSL, British Sign Language, but there is TTSL and Caribbean Sign Language, which is like totally different. And it's all about what our differences are and how we reach out to be able to share the wonders of the universe with everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you said, it's good for us as well. It opens our world. So I think it's a symbiotic relationship, right? I mean, we get a lot from that too.
Yes. Yes, that's exactly it.
Oh, they're back. Santiago, tienes el mute puesto.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So, short comment and question for sharing. I was telling that after so many years, we now have like 3D printing, we have sonification and a lot of new technologies. So I want to ask you, what are the new challenges nowadays compared to the ones we had like 3 decades ago? Are there new challenges that we have to face?
Yeah, so what we, as well as say the blind community, will experience as well is that while the technology aids, sometimes it can actually be overwhelming also. And sometimes in terms of how directed and focused the information is that we need, or you could be bombarded with a lot of information. And I think even that becomes a challenge for the blind community. And that's where we have to, like say for the Caribbean and the work that we are doing, focus them, set up outlets and things that we could direct them to, or else just even navigating the landscape can be difficult. And I speak as a person who's sighted, that I feel overwhelmed that with the technology, the other thing too, as much as technology is aiding, it's changing so fast that the learning curve and that you can get left behind. But what my experience has shown me is that, of course, nothing can outdo the wonders and the positive aspects of technology, is that it has made it so easy for me to communicate with these persons. They are excellent at texting, at emailing, voice noting, and talking to them. So there's absolutely no doubt that the technology has been wonderful. They've also expressed to me that one of their challenges is actually, you might not think of it unless you hear it from them, is actually transportation. So you have to understand that in Trinidad and Tobago and in the Caribbean, there are not that many systems in place for because there's, well, will seem like a minority community, and transportation is difficult for them. And they said that if we can organize things that are online, they will be very happy to participate. So I think in the end, technology wins out, obviously. Obviously, that's what we're doing here right now.
Okay, Shirin, so it's always glad to hear you. Thank you very much. We have to move to the next speaker, which is ready to go on the virtual stage. So thanks a lot.
Okay. Thank you. It was a true honor, Santiago and Brice and the rest of the team. Thank you for having us.
Okay, so we move to our next speaker, who is James Trafford. Can you hear us, James? Are you there?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, we also hear you.
Excellent.
So, yours, whenever you want.
Okay, great. Yeah, I was just about to share screen, but it says that I don't have screen sharing enabled. Is it possible to enable that for me?
Okay, just a second, James.
Okay.
We are on time.
Okay, excellent. It looks like I can do that now.
All right.
So let me just set that up. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Okay. Oh, to get rid of that. And this. Okay. Yeah, great. So I should be, yeah, so you can see my slides. Is that okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, great. Yeah, so thank you very much. And thanks to the organizers for having me and putting on this wonderful conference. It's been really great to hear all of these incredible projects from across the world. So I'm going to be focusing on this one project that I'm working on, this Ear to the Sky project, which is really focusing on sonification, which, as we've heard about, is this way of presenting sound or presenting data using sound. But really focusing on a very broad audience, from accessible outreach and education at a very elementary level, people just being introduced to scientific and astronomy concepts, all the way up to tools that could be used by professionals to actually do research using sound. So this is quite broad in that respect, what we're trying to do. And Shirin's given a very nice introduction today, and there's been some other talks in this session about sonification in particular with regards to accessibility. But just to emphasize again, we have a strong visual bias in astronomy, particularly in astronomy, but in science in general. You know, we produce these beautiful images of stars and galaxies and planets, which are great at inspiring people to enter astronomy. But if you can't perceive those images, you're being excluded. So really, if we can use sound to communicate science data or the beauty in the data itself, then we can actually engage a broader range of people. So the other problem is if you're blind or visually impaired, you're necessarily kind of being excluded by the lack of tools in research. So even if you have the enthusiasm or build the enthusiasm and confidence to go into research, the tools don't exist for you to deal with data. You know, we rely so much on making and showing and looking at plots and showing slides and reading papers and all these kind of things. So one thing that we can do with sonification is try and tackle this stereotype, you know, and about 1 in 200 people worldwide, as we heard, are blind or visually impaired, are registered as blind, I should say, whereas only a handful of working astronomers at PhD level or above are. So there's a clear underrepresentation there that I think connects clearly to this bias that we have. And again, lots of people have introduced this kind of concept of sonification and how it relates to visualization, which is, I think, a useful analogy given how much we use visualization. So sonification, this representation of data through sound, we can think of actually the limits of astronomical data in terms of what we actually see. We really rely on telescopes to see the universe outside of our very narrow range that we can actually perceive in the optical, and also to detect things much dimmer than we can see with our naked eye. We can only see the very brightest phenomena in the sky. So actually, we're doing this quite a lot, taking something invisible and trying to make it visible. So why can't we take something and make it audible, make it something we can hear? And that's really what we're trying to do with sonification. So I think altogether, this motivates this idea of sonification, right? We want to do accessible and inclusive science, particularly for those with blindness and visual impairment, but also people with non-visual learning styles. There's lots of research into how people learn in different ways. And another powerful potential thing is the fact that through communicating through different senses, people can build up a more robust understanding of scientific concepts by hearing it, seeing it, all these combinations together. So by appealing to multiple senses at once, we can really try and do a better job of communicating science. We can make more engaging and immersive outreach. You know, usually these things don't have sound. So if we can add sound, we can really enhance the experience while also making it accessible. And this also gives us new perspective on data. You know, maybe our ears are better at certain tasks than our eyes are for a sighted person. So it really depends on the task. And what I'm particularly interested in with this project is actually demonstrating that we can use sonification in scientific context to actually do things that are scientifically useful, particularly compared to visualization. If we can demonstrate that, then it seems like this is something that we could actually integrate into our sort of analysis process in in astronomy as astronomers. And this would give us a way of making the core of astronomy more accessible, right? If you can get sonification to catch as an idea, you can make the whole field more accessible. So this is where this Strauss code comes in, and this is closely related to the Audio Universe project that Shirin kindly talked about before. So Strauss was underpinning a lot of this work in terms of making the sonification itself. There was a paper on the archive yesterday about it, and there's a few links here that you can follow to learn more about the code that I won't have time to talk about. But really, we're trying to make a low barrier, so easy to get started, but high ceiling, so with a lot of potential to make things very complex and sophisticated tool that's open source and in Python, so it can easily be integrated into lots of these development pipelines. And this has now been funded through this UK STFC grant, which is a real important step, I think, in showing that we can demonstrating that we can win sort of funding and that this is a viable thing from the research councils. So hopefully people can use this to as an example when applying for more grants and things. So we really wanted Strauss to be easy to use, this low barrier idea. And one thing that we've integrated quite a lot is these Jupyter notebooks, particularly through Colab, which allows you to run things in the browser. This can be really effective as a way, accessible in the sense of people finding it easy to get started, especially if they've never even coded before. We found that a lot of students can go through these notebooks and just run bits of code and listen to the sounds and play with things and actually very quickly get an idea of how these things work. So that's accessible in one sense, but also see Jen Kotler's talk from yesterday about this Notebooks for All project. Unfortunately, as accessible as this might be for teaching people who aren't used to coding, it's very inaccessible in terms of visual impairment to actually use the code in this kind of context. So we're trying to combine scripting as well as the more fancy Jupyter notebooks as a way of doing things. And hopefully, with initiatives like the Notebooks for All, people can really start to develop more accessible notebooks so that these can be a more universal tool. And one thing that was really nice to see was Dr. Enrique Perez Montero using Strauss to actually sonify concepts related to his research. You can find that at this tiny little link here. So one of the sort of flagship things that used Strauss and that Shirin talked about, which was great, was this tour of the solar system, this audio universe tour of the solar system, where we really tried to make the first blind visually impaired accessible planetarium show, where the full show is sonified. It took a lot of time to really try and sonify all of the concepts that we were communicating as part of the show. And this can be found online. You can see the whole thing. And, we were quite happy with the final result, but it was really, what was really amazing to see was some of the feedback that we got, just really moving. Again, as Shirin said, like the sort of enthusiasm and gratefulness, just having gone to the effort of making this accessible. There's certainly things we could have done better in the show. But I think it was just amazing to see how, grateful people were to actually have that be a key part of the show, which really makes me excited about working more on this kind of thing. And yeah, you can find the Spanish version online as well here. So one thing from that show was, I can show you one example. This is, we tried to sonify the Earth. So how do we do that? Well, the light glares off the oceans. So over the ocean, you're getting more of this glare, whereas over land, you get less of it. So one thing we can do with Strauss is take a sort of musical chord, at least a Western musical chord, and we can change the tone of it, the timbre of it, so that you hear a brighter sound when you have more of this glare and a duller sound where you have less of the glare. In this way, we can try and hear the oceans. So a brighter sound might be something like a steel pan, right, with lots of harmonics at high frequencies. And a duller sound might be something like a tom drum, which has fewer of these high harmonics. So that's the idea, but it sounds complicated, but really just I invite you to listen to it, and you can close your eyes or watch it as you sort of hear as this rotates. So starting in the Pacific Ocean, and we'll pass over different land masses. Passing over Uruguay. So in this way, we could sonify the oceans to represent the Earth. Another example was the stars appearing. It's a similar idea. For a sighted person, you might be familiar with this experience of going out on a dark night and you see a few bright stars. And then over time, our eyes adjust and we see more and more dim stars. So we tried to make a sonified version of this so that you could hear the brighter stars first, and then you hear dimmer and dimmer stars over time. We also mapped those stars' colors to the pitch of a note. So you're also getting color information. A higher pitch note tells you it's a bluer star. We were managed, and the nice thing with Strauss is that we can map this all spatially. So we can do this in full surround sound and actually integrate this into something like virtual reality so that people can really be immersed in the night sky with sound. So yeah, I'm not going to play the whole thing today, but please check it out if you're interested in seeing the whole thing. So a final thing I wanted to talk about was this planetarium show. As I mentioned, this is kind of an outreach thing. This is an idea of getting people understanding these concepts with sound, but we also want to do things for real research. So this paper that you can find on the archive and in RAS Techniques and Instruments, we looked at turning the frequencies in an electromagnetic spectrum into frequencies of sound to allow people to directly hear astronomical spectra. So, and what was really encouraging was that people could actually pick out these key physical properties from, with very little training and with, very short clips of these spectra. It's actually potentially a very efficient way of inspecting spectra. And one thing that we wanted to do with this was inspect what we call hyperspectral data. So something like a data cube, some people might be familiar with, where every pixel has a whole spectrum down it. We can hear just around the H alpha line for this galaxy here, this example. So there's clearly a lot of information in there, right? And one of the things that you're hearing is Doppler shift. So the change in pitch across the disk is telling you the different velocity structure in that gas as it rotates. Also, you hear this kind of noisier sound in the center compared to the outskirts, which is because there's a black hole in the center of this galaxy that makes the motions very chaotic in the center. So these are like key physical things that we hope we can demonstrate that you can actually hear in the data and use this as a way of inspecting this complex data form. So yeah, I think I'm out of time, but I will leave my summary up and thank you very much for listening. Thanks everyone. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, James. Great experiences, a lot of information, new information for me, actually. We have time for a question or two, if you have preguntas. Yes.
Hello, my name is Erika. I wonder, how do you choose what to sonify from all the samples you show? What's the intuitive, knowledge that you can get from those sounds? I don't know if I explain myself.
So is the question like how do you how do you choose what data or how to sonify the data? Like what?
First of all, how you choose what data, what characteristic of that data to sonify? Because what is harder to know, harder to do, I think, is to give the right input to the blind person. I mean, for him or her really understand what he or her is listening. So how do you do that?
Yeah, it's very key, and this is something that we try and make sure that we do. So, for example, in the tour of the cosmos, you'll see that we try and explain all these concepts. You will be hearing this property of the sound is going to represent this thing, and obviously sonification's pretty new, right? So in terms of general use, so compared to visualization, so these kind of conventions also have to be developed, like what does pitch represent in astronomy, or what does brightness of or the tone of a sound or the volume represent. So all these things have to be established, and if they're not common knowledge, you have to explain what you're doing. And it's probably something in a short talk that I don't explain as well, but we really tried to take the time to give a good explanation in the actual planetarium show. And I think this is a key point in having these clear explanations. It's all very well making a pretty sonification, but if you don't explain what you're hearing, then it's not much scientific use to anyone.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other short question before moving?
Sorry. Hello, James. I'm Joanna. It's not a
Ah,
question.
hi.
Congratulations for all the work. I love all your new works. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. It's nice to hear from you. Thank you.
James again, everyone. Thank you. Okay,
Thank
thanks,
you.
James, for joining our workshop. So we move on to our next speaker and also we switch back to Spanish. Nuestro siguiente conferencista es Oscar Contreras Villarroel, que nos va a hablar de el proyecto en el GMT, en el telescopio gigantesco de Magallanes. Bienvenido.
Gracias. Ah, em, bueno, hola a todos. Estoy muy feliz de estar acá, mi primera vez en este workshop. Y estoy muy contento también quizás de el enfoque de la presentación, que va a ser un poco distinto a mostrar solo una iniciativa, sino creo que lo que se van a poder llevar después de estos, ojalá 10 minutos, es conocer todas las plataformas que está implementando el Giant Magellan Telescope y a las cuales ustedes podrían acceder e implementar sus iniciativas. Muy feliz también de que existe un show de planetario para personas ciegas o con discapacidad visual y nosotros también contamos en nuestros programas con un planetario que está viajando por distintos lugares. Em, Bueno, contarles quizás un poco desde el inicio. Bueno, yo soy Oscar Contreras, soy uno de los VP y el representante en Chile del telescopio Magallanes Gigante. Nosotros somos la próxima generación de telescopios ópticos infrarrojos de la clase de 30 metros. Vamos a contar con 7 de los espejos más grandes del mundo, de 8,4 metros de diámetro, que se están construyendo en Arizona y luego van a tener que viajar a Chile. Em, También, bueno, les contaba que vamos a tener 200 veces la potencia de la capacidad de los telescopios existentes y también contarles que ya estamos en construcción en el Observatorio de las Campanas al norte, al sur del desierto de Atacama, al norte de La Serena, para los que conocen la zona, y esperamos estar en operación en los próximos años. Somos un esfuerzo global. Somos una colaboración internacional pública-privada, yo creo que de las más grandes en la historia de la ciencia, a diferencia de los grandes proyectos de infraestructura científica, gran parte eh, de nuestros socios son socios privados, somos un consorcio de 13 organizaciones de investigación y universidades principalmente de Estados Unidos, eh, Israel, Corea del Sur, Australia, Brasil. em, y claramente nuestro país anfitrión, Chile. Principalmente las universidades, como les contaba, americanas son universidades privadas, pero también hay una del sistema público y organizaciones como el Smithsonian. Eh, También somos parte del US Extremely Large Telescope Program en conjunto con TMT y NOAA Lab y fuimos categorizados como una de las primeras prioridades para Estados Unidos en la próxima generación de infraestructura. Bueno, ¿qué les quiero contar con todo esto? Que cuáles son las preguntas científicas que vamos a poder investigar o nuestro telescopio como plataforma le va a entregar a los astrónomos. Esto básicamente es el siguiente salto grande en la astronomía y no sé si veo que hay varios astrónomos, algunos en Outreach, pero a los que son más de investigación, esto va a ser el próximo telescopio infrarrojo junto con los otros dos proyectos que existen en construcción en la actualidad. Pero les quiero contar acá sobre lo que estamos desarrollando en nuestro Social Impact. Como les contaba, nosotros somos un proyecto en construcción y nos planteamos la pregunta en su momento de qué es lo que realizamos durante este tiempo de la construcción y desde los comienzos empezamos a trabajar con plataformas para outreach, educación y también vinculación con las comunidades cercanas al observatorio, pero también a las comunidades que están cercanas eh, hacia los socios y también países que son miembros, por lo cual nos estamos considerando como una plataforma global. Hasta el momento hemos impactado a más de 62.000 personas en los distintos programas que tenemos. 6.500 estudiantes, más de 200 profesores de forma directa. Tenemos un programa de arte y ciencia, trabajando con más de 230 artistas en el momento, y desarrollamos distintas actividades de community engagement, donde hemos estado desde el Festival Lollapalooza hasta City of Stars en Los Ángeles. Por lo cual hemos tomado este tiempo para específicamente probar distintas iniciativas, y al igual que nuestro origen de muchos socios que conforman este telescopio, también toda nuestra implementación de programas está basada en la colaboración y la generación de alianzas, y se los voy a contar más adelante. Voy a ir también comentándoles un poco sobre nuestros programas actuales. Desde este año estamos realizando el primer concurso de arte y astronomía digital en Chile, que fue una convocatoria abierta a artistas chilenos o artistas residentes en el país. Este concurso fue realizado en colaboración con el Banco Interamericano de Desarrollo y la Fundación Antena. Recibimos más de 200 postulaciones a este concurso de arte, y a la vez más de 12.000 personas participaron en una sección de votación de las obras ganadoras. Nuestro primer tema fue extrasolar, específicamente exoplanetas, que es una de las preguntas científicas que va a trabajar el telescopio Magallanes Gigante. Y termino también con un espacio de votación del público. Este programa fue el piloto el año pasado y ahora se está buscando las próximas líneas de trabajo. Este programa ahora se va a implementar en Chile y en Estados Unidos, y todo, al igual que todas nuestras iniciativas, en español e en inglés, por lo cual vamos a buscar también formas de abordar temáticas de inclusión que les voy a contar más adelante. Eh, También nos preguntamos, al ser una infraestructura tan grande en la mitad de un desierto, ¿cómo podemos llegar a nuestras comunidades? Y así trabajamos con infraestructura móvil. También tenemos un laboratorio que es básicamente un trailer que fue construido, y al interior es una sala interactiva. Y además contamos con un planetario móvil que viaja específicamente por las distintas regiones del país, focalizado en Chile, implementando distintas iniciativas educativas de enseñanza astronómica o de enseñanza STEM, específicamente hands-on. Em, Iniciativas que también hemos desarrollado en el telescopio o no hemos desarrollado en alianza con otros creadores educativos, y van a ver en cada uno de nuestros programas. Este programa en particular se implementa con el Observatorio de las Campanas y con la Fundación EcoScience, que fueron eh, parte de los creadores de esta infraestructura itinerante. Y específicamente hemos podido visitar distintas localidades del país. Como ven ahí, está en nuestro punto con nuestro símbolo específico del telescopio Magallanes Gigante, y han podido ver que con esta infraestructura hemos podido visitar distintas regiones del país, llegando a comunidades de nuestro interés, que en particular son niñas, niños, jóvenes, estudiantes, profesores y también la comunidad en general. Eh, Y la invitación es a toda esta comunidad de creadores de herramientas que se queden en mente todas las posibilidades de colaboración que puedan tener con el telescopio. Eh, También tenemos una alianza específica visitando y